2019. I'd ask if everyone now could please rise to salute our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Here. Mayor Dunleavy.
Here.
Councilman Costa.
Here.
D'Amato.
Here.
Del Ripa.
Here.
Hudson. Here. Sondermeyer.
Here.
Yazdi.
Here.
Also with us are Municipal Clerk Brianna Calabro and Borough Attorney Dawn Sullivan. This meeting is called pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Law. Adequate notice of this meeting was advertised in the Herald News on December 23rd, 2018, and copies were provided to all local news media posted here at Borough Hall. There are two presentations this evening, and for the first discussion, I'd ask Councilwoman Dawn Hudson to join me off the dais.
Yeah, wrong, yeah. Do you want me to roll this over, John? Do you want this?
No, you're good.
For yourself?
You're good all talk.
Okay, so, Jim, I lied. Sorry, but I had to because I knew you wouldn't come if I didn't. So, I just want everyone to know, the last 3 years, this is our third full year at the garden, and it has really, I think, been our best year. And if it was not for you, I don't think that we could have accomplished everything that we've accomplished. And I don't think that that garden would have flourished and grown without your touch every single day. Jim was there just about every day. When we had an issue with an animal, that was the gentleman that helped us out. Animals, yeah, including a very sneaky skunk caught in there. But he really has taken this garden to another level, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, and how everyone at the garden has noticed, has, messaged me and emailed me, and, told me how much they appreciate you being there. It really means a lot. So tonight I want to give you a certificate.
Jim, come on up.
Come on. So Jim, this is to you for your significant contributions to the borough's community garden through your time, actions, talents, and dedication. It's the foundation upon which communities succeed and progress. We thank you for your hard work and commitment to our Bloomingdale community. This is for you. Thank you very much for everything. Which I had to hide this too. This is for you, from all of us, from the garden.
That means you're not going away.
For something else. So, and Mike's gonna take a picture. Come on up.
You over there? You didn't ever see her this evening.
We do. We do.
Nice to see you.
The Brosses, thank you so much.
No, Ross. I will not be thankful.
Jody has really been a huge help also, and I really do appreciate that. Not, Jim really.
I found the skunk, I immediately called Jim.
That's pretty much it.
And I did not.
Yeah, but still, and I want to just make sure that we are very clear in this. The skunk was humanely captured and just across the parking lot let go.
You little stink.
Without any incidents.
Get us.
Now it's a sharp out, so.
That was from my back.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Awesome.
Thank you.
All three.
Thank you for everything. I appreciate it.
You can Photoshop this.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Take your home. Take your home. Thank you. Our next presentation, we have Planning Board Chairman Ed Simone and Planning Board Commissioner Bill Graff here to present to the governing body the recent adopted, or soon to be memorialized redevelopment plan. That I want to start by saying we as a council did a resolution almost a year ago, right? So long, well, 2 years counting the year piece, right? To give the mission to the planning board to study the redevelopment area of the Muir Tract, and also parcels on Union, but primarily Main Street. And after many, many meetings and hundreds of hours of meetings, to Sheldon's time as well as our planning board, we have our final product, and it was a successful vote at the planning board, which they'll memorialize at their next meeting, but it'll eventually come to the governing body for adoption of declaring Main Street an area in need of redevelopment. And so Ed and Bill are here tonight to present to us. So on behalf of the council, I want to thank you, Ed, as chairman, and you, Bill, for all your expertise you put into this project, as well as many other things that you do for the town, and also the entire planning board. So thank you. So gentlemen, if you come on up, the floor is yours. And then anyone wishing to stay is more than welcome. Gentlemen, is your easel here?
Yeah, we're good.
You're good?
Good to use it there, fine.
Good. And again, thank you for being here, and thank you for everything you do.
Our pleasure.
Appreciate it. I don't have a hope for you, but that's okay.
I'll borrow that one.
Has everyone in the council gotten copies?
Yes.
This way you can follow along. Just the mayor is correct, it's been a long process. Just so that the council understands, approximately 18 months ago, our first meeting with CME Association was consigned to do the study for the planning of the town. CME came, presented their findings to the board, and our planning board, being what it was, sent it back. And at that point, we started to meet with CME, take it apart, really look at it. So that everybody understands, the entire planning board worked on this. It was decided that we needed a small committee in order to keep everything together and concise. So Mr. Graff and I were assigned to the committee along with our planning board attorney and our planning board engineer, Mr. Barati. What we did is we had every member of the planning board walk Main Street and Van Dam. We broke them into small groups so there wouldn't be a quorum present. Mr. Graff took one set of groups, I took the other set of groups. We walked the east side of Main Street, back down the west side of the Main Street. We switched so that as we were walking, Mr. Graff got input from the group of people that were walking with me earlier. I got input from Mr. Graff's people. And we did this on multiple occasions on both Van Dam and on Union. It was amazing to see many of the planning board members who are lifelong residents. When they started looking into the buildings and into the backyards and along the river part of Main Street, they were like, boy, we forgot about this. We forgot what we have here. That also prompted approximately 5 meetings between Mr. Brigliadoro, Mr. Graff, myself, and CME to keep bringing this plan more into what would fit for Bloomingdale. And Mr. Graff came up with the brilliant idea of using our tax maps and coloring them and illustrating them, and he will make his presentation in a minute. And from that, we came up with the plan that you see here today. The other part of this plan that was implemented was we had 3 public meetings. The first 2 public meetings were basically fact-finding meetings from the town. And I have to say, our town was excellent. The first meeting, we had approximately 110 to 120 residents. Everybody was nothing more than respectful. Everybody put their input in. The underlying tone from the entire town was they wanted redevelopment. They understood. As you know, there was some dissatisfaction with the way the beginning of the development started, and we straightened that out. The second meeting was still filled with residents, and what came out of that was every resident in this town had a chance to talk, sometimes 2 and 3 times. There was no resident from this town that left any one of these meetings without having a chance to be heard. And on multiple occasions, there were no more raised hands when the meeting was over. We also heard input from objectors and their attorneys, and we listened to that. Mr. Graff came up, when we came up with the final plan, that was sent out to the planning board members, and Mr. Graff's phone and my phone rang for probably about 2 weeks straight. And they gave us our input on the maps, and the maps have constantly changed, listening to the input from our residents. So with that being said, it was an 18 to 20 month process. There was a lot of work, but everybody participated. The board that you people appointed really did their job, and they should be commended. With that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Graff, and he's going to present the findings, and this way we'll show you on the large map, and you can follow on the small.
Bill, before you begin, I just want to say, so the public understands, this is the first step in a process, and the first step is declaring Main Street an area in need of redevelopment. And with that declaration now allows us to now develop, an actual plan, what we want to see there, ultimately name a developer, and try to start seeing some action. We recently were awarded a $70,000 grant from the Highlands, because we are in the Highlands, for helping to assist with this planning. That'll be a 2020 project that I'll get you guys involved with. But I was pleased to just be notified last week about this grant. That's going to help us continue this process, but it's the first step in a continuing process and to see what the end game that we all want to see. So, thank you. Bill?
Good. Yeah. Okay. I think probably some comments are necessary just to put this plan and run you out in front of you in some kind of context and perspective, and to just very briefly go over the local redevelopment housing law and how we used it with CME. The first part of our role was to ensure, and by the way, just to keep on track and keep this moving, I'm going to refer to my notes. The first part of our role was to ensure that a study was completed, right? And making sure that we were assigning criteria of the local redevelopment housing law to the 111 tax parcels that you folks sent to us in a resolution. Another part of that was to hold a public hearing that Ed mentioned. The local redevelopment housing law provides for 8 criteria that can be assigned to a piece of property. Any one of those 8 criteria can designate that piece of property as an area in need of redevelopment. The law also provides a 9th criteria, and that 9th criteria is called A3, simply for the section of the law that it happens to be contained in. And that 9th criteria simply says, if that piece of property doesn't fit any of these 8 criteria, but you need it to complete a redevelopment area, an integral part or a contiguous part, if you will, then you may assign an A3 criteria to that. So it doesn't meet any of the substantial 8, but it's needed to complete a redevelopment area, so therefore you can designate it as an A3 piece of property. Right? The second part of our role was to use our judgment after the study is completed and see which of these properties really belongs in a redevelopment area. Right? And that's what we've done in the last few months, and that's what we're about to talk with you guys here tonight. After that first draft of the study was received, as Ed referenced and John referenced, we received the first draft of that study in April of 2018. Right? That's for the Main Street and the Van Dam Avenue study areas. So it's well over a year since we received the first draft of the study. Early on in our process, 9 properties in the Main Street study area. The Main Street study area, as you'll see or have seen, being defined from Van Dam over to the intersection of Glenwild, right? What we would call our commercial corridor for the most part. 9 properties in that study area were removed from consideration. One of the first things we did. 2 of them were church properties, right? And we looked upon them as inherently beneficial uses, which is a zoning designation. 2 of them comprised Sloan Park. Sloan Park, guys, really has 2 lots and blocks associated with it. One is what we affectionately know as Sloan Park, and where most of the work was done. And the other lot and block is a very small strip of land between Dan Mahler's property and the entrance to Sloan Park. Very small, narrow strip that actually has its own lot and block number. So Sloan Park actually has 2 lots and blocks that comprise it. 5 of those 9 were residential properties in the R10 zone on the fringes of and adjacent to what we would call our commercial area. Right? They didn't meet any of the local redevelopment housing law 8 criteria, and very frankly, in our view, there was no A3 rationale for including. Right? So those 9 properties were eliminated early on. 9 properties were also classified as A3, meaning that they didn't meet any of the 8, but they were needed because they were an integral part of what a potential redevelopment area could be. Right? 5 of these are residential properties in the R10 zone on Hamilton. We'll go over those. 1 property is in the R10 zone on Van Dam, and you'll see what that one is also. 3 properties are commercial properties on Main Street. All right, the Kebab House Mediterranean Grill, Cafe Chameleon, and the new D4 Properties mixed-use building. All right, so those were 9 that were designated as A3. From a zoning perspective, it's interesting to note that of the 105 tax parcels, right, in the Main Street study area, and the 6 tax parcels in Van Dam, there are 42 non-conforming uses. Just think of that, 42 non-conforming uses out of 111 tax parcels. 40 of those 42 are residential and commercial zones, all right, in the Main Street study area. All right? 2 of them are commercial in commercial zones, 1 in the Van Dam area and one is in the Main Street study area. The implication of that being the following, right? That for better or worse, all right, there's a significant residential component in our commercial district, all right, and that residential component affects the character of that commercial district. As I said, for better or worse, it affects the character of that commercial district. After the study was completed, right, there were a number of factors that played a role in our recommendation, and we attempted to achieve a balance among those in no particular order. They are the overall character of our commercial district and preserving elements that could have a positive impact. In other words, those properties that should be treated as an asset, all right, and leveraged, not as a liability. Right? The existence of residential neighborhoods that are a current asset to the borough weighed against the potential impact of an expanded commercial district. The actual or perceived negative impact of properties due to their location and or their use. The potential challenge of land assemblage without condemnation, which was removed from the study, right, after our first meeting. Right? But the potential challenge of land assemblage without condemnation as a facilitator, because that really is the purpose of the condemnation, to facilitate land assemblage. The comments from the public hearing. The topography of property or groups of properties, which we'll mention as we go along here. Also, in our view, the properties where redevelopment would have the greatest impact rather than rely on market forces. And we consider the other side of that argument as well. Right? Where should market forces be given the opportunity to play a role at this point in time, right? Rather than declare an area in need of redevelopment? And lastly, and maybe this is the most important, all right? Do we get an overall sense of moving forward with the recommendation that we are making? Do we feel good about it? All right? And that was important. That was important to us. You know, it needs to be said, guys, that we fully appreciate that other folks looking at the same set of criteria and considerations could come up with a different solution, if you will. All right? And that's where individual judgment plays a role. But we fully understand that. Somebody else could look at it and come up with an entirely different recommendation. All right, the tax maps that you have in front of you, and the large ones here that I'll reference, are color-coded so that the existing zones, and that's one reason why we chose to use the tax maps, because it was easy to color coding according to the zones, all right, that are in existence today. So we'll start out with the Van Dam study area. Van Dam study area, as we said, had six parcels in it initially. 2 borough-owned right here, right? Large vacant one over here, and 3 here. 2 in the B1A, and this R10 right here.
Just show everyone Van Dam, so everyone can, in perspective, show where Van Dam.
Van Dam being right here. Oh, excuse me.
That's right,
Van Dam being right here.
Yep,
And Union being right here.
thank you.
So, one of the things that we looked on early on, and we said, well, you know, that's rather strange. We said to ourselves, all right, because all these R10s right here aren't included. So we were trying to come up with a rationale as to why that would be the case, or why that wouldn't be the case.
Can you just explain to everybody so they understand what R10, B1, R20 all is? So.
Sure. R10 is our R10 residential zone.
Mhm.
All right. B1A is one of the commercial zones, and the R20U is a combination of an office zone and a residential zone.
It's mixed use.
So, when we looked at all this, what's the rationale for including that guy right there? Okay? And when we came to understand that the owner of that property is also the owner of this vacant lot right here, then we saw some rationale for doing that. But at the first public hearing, when the owner of that piece of property got up and said, we object to being included in the redevelopment area, as we're sitting up there listening, that said an awful lot to us. All right? I said, the logic that we were looking at, all right, for why he was included, that lot was included, really didn't hold. So as we looked at this in the final analysis for a recommendation, is this guy was an A3. I said, there's no reason to include that since the owner is objecting in the first place. So our recommendation was that the redevelopment area for the Van Dam study area be the 2 borough-owned lots, the 2 B1As on the corner there, and the large vacant lot. But that's some of the rationale as to why that R10 residential is not included. Because, you know, it would make all the sense in the world from a planning and a zoning point of view if we had seen a resolution that included these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 residential lots. Because then, yeah, they would be A3s, but they would be needed to complete a potential redevelopment area. But with these folks not even being included here, the logic for including that lot just didn't exist. Just wasn't there. Okay? All right. Now, in the Main Street study area, we broke it up for purposes of discussion into 2 parts: east of Union and west of Union. So here's Union, right? And we'll take east of Union first. Once again, R10 is in blue. Our B1A commercial zone, which is a more restrictive zone than our B1 commercial zone, and our B1, which is red. So let's take a look at what we have here. What you guys can see in front of you also is, you see this one lot right here? That's the guy when you first come into town on the right-hand side, right before you hit Van Dam Avenue. Well, it was included, but it's one of those lots that early on, he's one of the 9 that we said, there's no rationale for including them. All right, none whatsoever. So we eliminated that lot right there. That was the only lot on the Union Main Street East area that we excluded right off the bat. Let me go up here first before I get to the redevelopment area itself. But what you see here is, here's Hamilton, okay? And Van Dam, Wallace, Union, right here, okay? There are 1, 2, 3 residential lots sitting back here. 2 of them on Van Dam, directly across from the R10 neighborhood, all right? And directly across from the rest of the neighborhood here on Hamilton. Very frankly, we saw no reason why they were commercial in the first place, all right? And part of our recommendation was to, and which you are addressing and introducing that ordinance this evening, is we recommend rezoning those 1, 2, 3 lots to R10. They are an integral part of a residential neighborhood, and once again, they are an asset to be leveraged rather than to be looked at as a liability in this regard. All right? And once again, these are R10s, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that were included in the study, and they were all assigned criteria. In fact, they were all A3s, because if they were to be included in a redevelopment area, they'd be A3s because they would be needed to complete it if we had made this whole thing a redevelopment area. However, in the final analysis, what we looked at for the eastern portion of the Main Street study area, let's start right here. We come into town, and I'm not using lots and blocks. I'm just using what we all know these properties as. All right? Happy's Garage sits right here. Happy's Garage plus 1, 2, 3 lots, all right, to be included as a redevelopment area. Now, when you drive down Main Street or walk down Main Street, be careful, because this guy right here has 2 structures on it. So if you count 3, you're going to be missing 1. You really need to count 1, 2, 3, 4 structures, all right, that are redevelopment area. The two Victorians that sit up a little higher up here are not included. Once again, we consider those an asset to be leveraged, part of the character of our Main Street, and not to be considered a liability from a redevelopment perspective. So this would be a redevelopment area, those lots and blocks that we're recommending there. And continuing on across Wallace over here. Now, these three, 1, 2, 3 residential lots, non-conforming, 3 of the 42 or 40 non-conforming uses, right? Sitting back here, an integral part, we believe, of this residential neighborhood, the whole thing, right? So we're recommending that those 3 lots, as well as these 3, be rezoned to R10, all right? They belong in the R10 zone, as well as these, just as these are here. Could not see the rationale for them being in the commercial zone. So, from a redevelopment area perspective, as we looked at this, here's Lakeland Bank sitting right here, okay? Here is the Mediterranean Grill here. So, all the properties along that part of Main Street, going up to the North Jersey transmission shop, coming back here. Now, this first lot right here is the first through lot that goes between Main Street and Hamilton. So that's the Hometown Pharmacy Shopping Center right there. Okay. So that's the first, there's the first through lot right here. So that would be a contiguous redevelopment area. There happen to be 2 residential properties in there. One sits right here, the other sits right here between the kebab house and the transmission shop. But they are non-conforming uses. That's not, by the way, a criteria in the housing law. But they just happen to be non-conforming. They happen to be they are truly an integral part of that redevelopment area because of where they sit in the middle there. So anyway, that would be another redevelopment area, those lots and blocks in there. All right, let's jump over to the other side of Main Street here, all right, on the riverside. You'll see when we get to the rest of it, or if you look ahead, that we really haven't addressed the riverside lots and blocks to any great extent, all right? Because there's an awful lot to be done from a DEP point of view, perhaps knowledge that needs to be gained. And also there's a lot to be said for letting market forces, all right, play a role. And that's a large part of what we look at. But anyway, here we are, we're sitting at the Gulf Station, right at the entrance to town, all right? Take that all the way through Wine Traders. This line right here includes the residential lot that's next to Wine Traders. All right? So Wine Traders plus 1. And we recommend, and the planning board approved, that be an area, that contiguous area be an area in need of redevelopment. Those lots and lots, right? Sitting right there. All right? Now, one of the things that we try to do, and hopefully it becomes clear as we go through the rest of it, all right? We try to take those entrances and exits to town, right, and have them be in a redevelopment area to create the best possible view of the borough. That was redevelopment area along here. Okay. So anyway, that would be the Main Street east portion of the Main Street study area. Can I address anything for anybody before we flip over?
I just want to point out that just we define it as such doesn't mean, like, let's say on the purple color, where you end by Wine Traders plus 1, doesn't mean that what's past that couldn't be
At some point in time,
redeveloped.
At some point in time, if another study was done,
Well, even without a study, a developer can come in and say, hey, I like this corner.
a developer can come in and purchase any property without it being classified a redevelopment area.
The redevelopment area allows us to, give some incentive possibly in the form
Yeah,
of,
I mean, if
Tax
the
incentives
collective,
and whatnot.
collective owners of any properties here,
right. Right, my point was, it doesn't mean nothing can happen where we're not delineating,
No,
right?
anybody can make an offer and anybody can
Correct.
accept an
I
offer.
just want to point that out.
Yeah, sure enough.
But can the owner of the existing properties become a developer for his own property to bring it up to what we're looking for?
Why not?
Yes.
The answer, that's what I'm asking.
Right.
Why not? Absolutely. And I think there's probably some thought and discussion in that regard with some, Ed, did you?
That's one of the things we looked at, that when you start to look at the overall view of this, it allows smaller property owners. There was a couple of them that came before the board and said, we know our property's not right. We'd love to do something with it, but we got the river, we got this, we got that. You know, we would need help, but we would be open to want to redevelop our properties. We would be open to that. So some of this, as you see, is just common sense that breaks it into areas where if a local merchant wants to decide to expand and purchase some of his neighbors, he has the ability to do so. And what the mayor asked before about whether or not the study area could be expanded, it most certainly can. Use it. Council decide to want to amend it because the developer wants to add in a couple of extra pieces of property and has a, you can do that.
And the criteria's been met, and all of that's
Criteria
in the
that
study, right?
You can do that. We researched that, we spoke about that at some of our meetings, that they should be able to use the study to expand. But we need a resolution from the council.
Right.
Ed, this doesn't remove the 150, 300-foot buffers
No.
by the river.
No,
No
No,
riparian rights get changed
Right.
here. No,
Right.
nothing. And that's one of the considerations.
That's a
on
separate
the
issue, yeah.
river
So
property.
difficult.
When Mr. Graff gets done, I have a few comments I'd like to make on that,
Right.
council, but I don't want to interrupt Mr. Graff.
Yeah, but just to put a fine point on the comments about doing something after the fact, that it certainly can be accomplished, they have to be identified, the lots and blocks will be identified again, come before the planning board again, and another, maybe a modified process would then begin for that, okay? So.
No, just one more question. The developer comes in and wants to buy the wine place. The negotiations
I'm
between.
sorry, John?
A developer comes in and wants to buy the wine place, the.
Wine
liquor store.
traders?
Yes. The negotiations just between them two, correct? We have nothing to do with it.
correct. It's a
That's right.
it's a private transaction.
Okay, it's a
That's
private
right.
transaction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so let's take a look at the main, what we call the Main Street West, all right? Part of the Main Street study area. Let's see, here we are, here's Union Avenue, all right? Once again, Main Street, river, right here, all right? R10 neighborhoods, all right, up through here, all right? These guys right here, just to talk about them, 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks. Here's Food World, here's Gary Todd Village condos, here's the new D4 property right here. These 1, 2, 3, 4 were all off the bat, one part of the 4 of the 9 properties that were eliminated from the study because there was no rationale that we could see to have them included. They certainly didn't fit any of the 8 criteria, and they weren't eligible, in our view, to be an A3 criteria because they weren't needed to complete an area. It would be needed to expand an area, not necessarily to complete an area. So, and they were an integral part of R10 neighborhoods. Once again, asset to be leveraged, not to be thought of as a liability. So those 4 were eliminated almost immediately. All right. So let's pick it up here from the Liberty gas station, all right, through Cafe Community, all right, as lots and blocks being designated as an area in need of redevelopment. Cafe Chameleon, because of the new construction going on there, being one of the ones that we mentioned before, that is one of the 9 A3s, all right, that was in there. All right. Once again, coming into town from Union Avenue, all right, this side, the other side also, all right? Trying to hit those entrances and exits, if you will. Coming across Ryerson here, over the new D4 property, newly built, one single property, nothing's really gonna happen with that. Perhaps, and nor should it. All right, I think there's so many folks that think it's extremely attractive and well done. All right, so that was not included. Gary Todd, it's one of those areas where we said, well, that guy's not included, just that one lot and block, let's let market forces bear there, all right? And see how market forces deal with the eight condos in Gary Todd. Same thing with Food World, one piece of property, not extremely recently, but in the not too far distant future, kind of redone. Does not look unattractive to that extent. We said, let's just leave that one alone right here, because this whole individual pieces of property, let's just leave it right where it sits. All right, let's cross Reeves and go to Loring's through Wayne Bedding. All right? So Loring's transmission through Wayne Bedding to be an area in need of redevelopment. Those buildings in there. As we move further west here, once again, here is almost a landlocked piece of borough property sitting up there. And now are the properties that we began to call the wall properties. Those residential units that sit kind of high up, you know, the topography kind of slopes down as you get further on down here, but challenging from a topography point of view, all right? Single watts, but very high slopes back here, and the church sitting right here. The church was one of the 9 A3s, one of the inherently beneficial uses. Right? So we said, all right, let's leave that right where it is right now. Let market forces bear on that for a bit and see what happens as time goes forward. Right? Continuing on west here, let's take this from Rite Aid, post office building right here, and the 3 residentials sitting right next to the post office up here, up to the church property. As an area, cohesive blocks in need of redevelopment. Well, once again, just to not that you need refreshing on this, but the entrances and exits to the Rite Aid piece of property somewhat horrendous, depending on the time of day that you choose or need to go in there. But that's only just an aside, to tell you the truth. So these right here, Rite Aid, post office building, right, plus 1, 2, 3, right up to the church property, an area in need of, once again, exit, entrance to the borough, right there. At least that part of our commercial district. Let's hop across the street here. Here's Main Street into Butler, right? Hop across the street to 2 river properties. The special needs building sitting here in the front, and the old municipal building and the old VFW building sitting right there. It's one of those sets of river properties that we said, okay, it's small enough, it's cohesive enough, let's make it an area in need of redevelopment. It fits the criteria. Right? Once again, on the entrance to the borough. Cross Main Street, sitting over here, we have the tattoo shop, LaSalle's Corner, some may call it King's Corner, and all the properties down to, but not including the bank. All right? Ending right before the bank, the building that contains Van Riper Electric and the barber shop. So, and everything that sits in between them. We felt it was a reasonable set of lots and blocks, a reasonable chunk of property, if you will, that it could be an area be classified as an area in need of redevelopment. Once again, good stretch of the river, you know, left to market forces at this juncture in time. Let's see, where are we? The Sloan Park, here's a little strip of land that was eliminated with Sloan Park. They had Mahler's Place sitting right here. A little strip of land, Sloan Park. The church property right here, the last remaining property that was one of the 9 as an inherently beneficial use and eliminated from the study. The last one, before I get to the last one, let me address this piece, and let me just go back and just point it out. Where?
Purple.
Purple. Traders, no, not that, it's not the piece of that, I'm sorry. That's not what I'm looking at. Right. Shopping center, all right? We chose not to include those, all right? For the simple reason that, are they as optimally placed on a piece of property as you could? From a planning point of view, perpendicularity isn't the most optimal way, all right? But considering the properties, considering that they're reasonably new, they contain some very successful businesses in there, we decided we'll leave those out of the area you need of redevelopment, all right? And include the Lena's property and the property next to Lena's. If you will, the strip mall that contains the borough rec offices, barbershop, and hair salon, and some other businesses. So reasonable, we felt reasonable piece of property, all right? And once again, a lot of this, the way we looked at it was the borough doesn't have condemnation as a facilitator for land assemblage, or a developer doesn't have condemnation. So let's look at things in terms of what might be considered reasonable pieces of land that could be assembled without creating very large challenges to that, all right? Because as I said, condemnation was no longer there as that facility. So anyway, that was the last one along here, the Lena's piece of property and the piece of property next to it. And then once again, we come to where we are here at the Union Avenue intersection, and over here was on the eastern part of the Main Street study area. So that was our recommendation. And as Ed said, the planning board accepted that recommendation on a unanimous vote, and that will be forward to you folks when it's memorialized at our next meeting.
Which is,
October 16th.
and we meet October 22nd.
So I thank you for
Well,
your kind attention.
I want to point out, thank you both very much. We had a great time, Bill. I do want to point out for the governing body, there's the study in itself from CME, our planner, right? That was the recommendations based on the criteria in housing law. If you look at the study, it's not going to show you what Bill just went over, because these are the recommendations.
This is the second part of our
Correct.
role.
Correct.
The first part of our role
This one.
was to ensure that the study was completed.
Correct.
The second part was to look at the study and say, now, using our judgment
Right.
and the criteria that we laid out, what do we believe should be areas in need of redevelopment?
So I just wanted to point that out. So if you look at the fancy color book one day, that's that CME will publish or give to us. Excuse me?
In the book, you're not going to see this.
You're not going to see this because that's the plan. This is the recommendation, which will be memorialized by resolution by the planning board and ultimately adopted by us.
The interesting part of that, I'm glad John reminded me, that 111 tax parcels, 105 in the Main Street area, 6 in the Van Dam area. The redevelopment areas that we have recommended and adopted by the planning board, 53. So of the 111, the planning board has recommended that 53 tax parcels be recommended for redevelopment. Not that that says anything, but it's just interesting the way the numbers break down, especially when you look at 40 non-conforming
Non-conforming,
residential uses in there. When you look at the numbers, the numbers just tell a story unto themselves, if you will.
That story's all bad. Any questions for Bill or Ed? Which gentleman? We thank you. Yes.
Two things I'd like
Sure,
to just bring up
please.
to the council. One of them is, Bill, you should have. When we talk about redevelopment on a river, and I know some members of the council are going to disagree with me on this. Yes, it's right. But we all seen how much trouble we had and what went on with trying to get the river and the Sloan Park squared away. We need, as a town, to start negotiations with the DEP and EPA to what we can and can't do before we decide what we're gonna redevelop.
Correct.
And I know a lot of people think that a developer's gonna come in with a suit of armor, driving a bulldozer, and solve it for us. But if we don't start it, it's not gonna happen. It'll make it easier for the developer if we start the dialogue with the state. The other thing we need to do, and we bantered about this on ordinance review, on the planning board, we've spoken, I believe, years ago to the council. We're already getting pockets of redevelopment, D4. My personal opinion is, what I think is gonna go first is going to be
Lorenz.
this. I think this is the easiest to acquire and the easiest on Main Street to develop. We need to have an idea of what we want to build.
Well, that's,
We
yeah.
don't have to have architecturals, but some standards. Do we want vinyl siding, or do we want stone, stucco,
But
and
thi-
cement?
Right, but this is step one,
Yeah,
what we're
but-
doing here. Step
we
two
need-
is exactly what you're talking
And
about,
we need to start moving.
which, as I stated a moment ago, we just got funding to do that plan next, so we'll be part of that
We
discussion.
need to get some sort of committee together.
Yep.
Of business people
Yep.
and everything,
Well, we're-
because we're gonna wind up with a real mission.
We're using a planner called New Jersey Future, who is a company that does planning in the Highlands that is gonna work with us on that 70,000 Highland grant, so we'll be having that discussion very shortly. But this was step one.
Because as a planning board, like when they come in and give us their proposal for, and I'm gonna use D4, but we have no control over what the building's
Right.
gonna
You're,
really
well,
look
you're
like.
you're talking about architectural review
Yeah,
kind of
so
stuff,
we
right?
need to move on that as a borough.
Correct. The other thing too is, there's no question there's a lot of restrictions with the river. But I think sometimes it's a little dramatized in the sense that it's already developed. So it's not like you're taking virgin river shoreline and wanting to develop it. It's already developed. So to convert a wine trade or Alina's into something new is not as difficult as we all think,
But-
because there's already the impervious coverage and an existing development.
But if a developer wants to come in and raise a building down to the ground and start over, then those 300-foot buffers that used to be 25 and 50 foot in 2007 and before, now they're 300-foot buffers, and they're sitting right where they were before, right where
Yeah,
those buildings
yeah,
And I
so
are.
think- and I kind of agree with you, you gotta start that now.
Whenever,
There's
you're not.
There's wiggle room.
There is,
We just
there
gotta
is.
find out
There
what it
is.
is.
You're not changing those rules. The developer is the one who's gonna have to design in such a way to satisfy those requirements, and that's an uphill battle for certain, but it's not that it can't be done.
It's doable, yes.
Correct.
That's doable, there's wiggle room. We
Right.
just gotta find out what
Again,
the wiggle
this is the first step in a long overdue process. Any other questions for Bill or Ed? Gentlemen, as always, thank you
Thanks.
Thank you.
for all your time and dedication and volunteerism to this borough. Incredible. Thank you. What's that?
Having dinner time. Have a
Good,
nice
same.
evening.
Yes, that's it. Yep.
Ed, thank you, and Bill.
You're very welcome.
Moving along on the agenda, there is no early executive session. There are two non-agenda items. First is introduction of an ordinance for a new or resurrected recreation ski program, and the second is a resolution to permit a road opening on Crane Ave, which I'll explain a little more detail. It's a minimal curb cut, those two items. At this time, need a motion to open early public comment for agenda items. And motion, please. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone wishing to speak to an agenda item? Yes, sir.
On the top, can I speak on the Main Street?
Sure.
My name is
You need to stand up, state your name and address for the record for Bree.
Sure. My name is David Lead. I own 16 Main Street, which I believe is the third, or you characterized as the fourth lot in Main Street East.
On Happy's.
Happy's Garage, there's a small house on the side.
Yep.
There's that wonderful property that has
Correct.
several houses on it.
Correct.
Whatever.
Yes.
And then there's mine,
Correct.
which is a blue house that sits up high on the wall, and then the two Victorians which were removed. So I'm assuming mine's included in the redevelopment.
That was what he proposed,
Well,
correct.
that's what and I haven't, I attended the first planning board meeting, but I haven't been, I guess condemnation has been removed.
Correct.
But I'm in the redevelopment area.
Correct.
So what does that mean for me?
It's the first step in our process of trying to redevelop Main Street is to first declare it an area is in need of. Because what that allows, without condemnation, or with condemnation, but it is without, it allows us to try to entice or incentivize development through payments in lieu of taxes, various tax incentive programs
To developers.
to developers.
Okay.
That otherwise couldn't even be proposed without being an area in need of redevelopment. So that's step one.
So if a developer came in and wanted my property to complete the parcel, whatever's.
That would be
proposed-
your negotiation with
Oh,
them.
nothing to do with the town.
Nothing to
The
do-
town's not going to acquire the property
No.
and work with the developer.
But I could entice, let's say a developer says, I want from Happy's to your building. But, I want to do this, I want to do X, Y, Z. What can the town do for me? Let's say on a true tax scale, his taxes are going to be $1.5 million. Well, we could say, well, we'll incentivize that by saying it's 800,000, in lieu of, trying to incentivize. But then
Right.
there's your negotiation, which without condemnation could stop that process.
Okay. So it's really up to me.
Correct.
Okay. Fair enough.
100%.
But you're on your own negotiating with him, whatever.
Correct.
If you decide
Correct.
yay or nay, sometimes things are worthwhile, sometimes they're not.
Right.
And the more incentive you give him, maybe the more incentive.
Correct.
he gives me.
Correct.
So that's a good thing.
Yes.
I heard mentioned that maybe the landowner could develop too. Obviously, it's got to meet the uses. And
Sure.
I heard you just talking about that's got to be decided on what it needs to look like and
Right.
what it is. So that's a possibility too.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It's zoned right now, I'm in a residential zone, I believe. So in order to change it to commercial, it would have,
You're in a B1A.
B1A, yeah.
is that?
Which is, yeah, it's a mixed business with housing, yeah.
Okay, so it's mixed use.
You're actually non-conforming because you're in a business zone as residential.
Yes,
So if you want to sneeze, you need a variance.
yeah.
If you want to not sneeze but make it a business, you're okay.
Okay. No, it's all good to know.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
That's all good to know.
Yeah.
'Cause and if it is a business use already, that's
Correct.
also good for me with the developer.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Good to see you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Hi, Larry. How are you? Seeing no one, motion to close.
Second.
All in favor? Reports. Dawn, anything for us?
Mayor, nothing this evening.
And Bree?
I don't know.
Any council member? All right, other than red twigs, done? Little,
There's some little things
Punch-
that have to be
punch list
punch
items.
But the 99%.
if you haven't driven up, check it out.
It's beautiful.
Reeve,
Really nice.
Clark, Walter Drive, Winterford were all paved, and it looks beautiful. Well done. So, a lot of other projects soon to go out to bid. Boston Street, which will be, hopefully, none of the utility will be this year yet, or we're trying, but it'll be a full paved curb next year. Sloan Park was graded. We're getting there. We got fencing, sprinkler, sod, sidewalk work, all within the next couple of weeks, and hopefully wrap that project up. All right. Anyone else? At this time, item 10, I need a motion for resolution 2019 10.1 through 10.10. Who makes that motion, please?
So moved.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Costa?
Yes.
Tomato?
Yes.
Colworth?
Yes.
Hudson?
Yes.
Sondemire?
Yep.
Yazdi?
Yes.
Item 11, call me off guard with that one. Second final reading, and public hearing on 25, 2019, amend Chapter 3, Police Regulations. Remember, this is simply amending a fee for online police reports. Public notice statement, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this ordinance was posted in the municipal building, published in the Herald News, and copies were made available to the public so that a motion may be made that it be read by title.
Who makes that motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
An ordinance of the Borough of Bloomingdale, County of Passaic, State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 3, Police Regulations of the Code of the Borough of Bloomingdale.
I need a motion to open public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone wishing to speak to 2519?
Go on, Bert.
Seeing no one, motion to close, don't entice.
So moved. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Who moves to adopt?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Roll call.
Tomato?
Yes.
Delripa?
Yes.
Hudson?
Yes.
Sandemeyer?
Yes.
Yazdi?
Yes.
Costa?
Yes.
Item B, second final reading, public hearing. Jesse?
Oh, no.
I'm sorry. Public notice statement, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this ordinance was posted in the municipal building, published in the Herald News, and copies were made available to the public so that a motion may be made that it be read by title.
And who makes that motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry. I'm good.
An ordinance of the Borough of Bloomingdale, County of Passaic, State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 19, Solid Waste Management, Section 19-2, Refuse Container Dumpster Regulation, and Chapter 2 Administration, Article 4, Administration, Section 2-17, Code Enforcement Officer of the Code of the Borough of Bloomingdale.
Thank you. Remember, this is simply to tighten up the rules on multifamily homes and make the enforcer, it used to be the police, now our property maintenance officer. Motion of public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone wishing to speak? 26, 2019. Seeing no one, motion to close.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Who moves to adopt?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Delripa?
Yes.
Hudson?
Yes.
Sandemeyer?
Yes.
Yazdi?
Yes.
Costa?
Yes.
Tomato?
Yes.
Thank you. New business, discussion and adoption resolution 1910.11, property registration program shared service with Passaic County Improvement Authority. Attended with the property maintenance officer a seminar regarding this program being offered by the county. This is strictly to register, track, and help control vacant foreclosures. This is only vacant foreclosures. Any vacant, non-bank owned property, this does not apply to, and our property maintenance officer, will always handle that as far as a registration standpoint. We currently have a vacant ordinance that requires a vacant home to be registered for $250. And we're constantly chasing, trying to find out who the bank is, who the management company is. It's quite the challenge, particularly for a part-time property maintenance officer. This shared service with the county's improvement authority hires a company called ProChamps, and they do all this work for you. And they have all the avenues and answers and connections as far as who the banks are, the management companies, and all of that. Here's how it works. We now would do 2 semi-annual registrations, $500 each. So it's $500 in January for vacant, foreclosed, bank-owned property, and $500 in July. The reason it's semi-annual, so you're touching it twice, because these banks change, they sell, they change their management companies monthly. It's incredible how difficult it is to keep tracking. For our property maintenance guy to send notices about registrations, never mind tall grass and all those issues. This company, ProChamps, does all of that for us, and our property maintenance officer now has a database to access with all his data to now send the notices of violation for property maintenance issues. The collection's done by the County Improvement Authority. Again, it's $500 per semi-annual, so it's $1,000 a year. ProChamps gets $100 of that registration, so we get $400. And the county gets $100, anything over $200, max $100. So we get $600 out of the $1,000 we charge. $400 goes to the county and ProChamps. We get $600. That's more than we're getting today. And it's tracked and maintained for us. So this resolution enters us into that agreement, and then we have to amend our vacant ordinance, which, Dawn, you were reviewing.
I am reviewing what
time.
they've proposed,
Yep.
yes.
Because they gave me their sample to compare to ours. Dawn's reviewing that to see what we got to
What needs to
blend.
be
Would I have to
changed.
repeal the one, introduce a new? So most likely next meeting, because we're running out of meetings, we'll introduce and adopt in November. And then pro champs will begin in January or the end of this year to do this on our behalf, which is just such a no-brainer. It's a good service. So that is what's on the table for this resolution to approve that shared service. So I'd ask for someone to make that motion, please.
So moved.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Hudson,
Yes.
Sondemire,
Yes.
Yazdi,
Yes.
Costa.
Yes.
D'Amato.
Yes.
Del Ripa.
Yes.
Item B is 10.12 resolution. Simply our joint insurance funds renewal is at 12/31. This is for our property and casualty, our buildings, our liability, our automobiles. It's just the continuation of that contract, which we need to do. So who makes that motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Sondemire,
Yes.
Yazdi,
Yes.
Costa.
Yes.
D'Amato.
Yes.
Del Ripa.
Yes.
Hudson.
Yes.
Item C is an introduction by title of ordinance 27, 2019, amending Chapter 92 zoning, 92.5 zoning map. This is the one Mr. Graff referred to earlier on the parcels on the back of, on Hamilton, that are commercial, really fit the residential look of the neighborhood, as well as the two on Van Dam. So this introduction is to amend those as per the ordinance review's request to residential. We will introduce with a second and final not till November 26th, because the planning board has 35 days to review. So who makes that motion to introduce by title?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
An ordinance of the Borough of Bloomingdale, County of Passaic, State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 92 zoning, Article 2, zone boundaries, Section 92-5 zoning map of the Code of the Borough of Bloomingdale.
Thank you. And next is an introduction of ordinance 28, 2019, amending Chapter 7 traffic. This is simply adding a stop sign on Clark going on to Red Twig. I believe it used to be a yield sign. So now that all its work is done, Clark coming up to Reed will now have a stop. Second and final will be 10/22. And who makes that motion, please?
So moved. Second.
D'Amato, Costa, any discussion? Roll call, please.
You just do all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
An ordinance of the Borough of Bloomingdale, County of Passaic, State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 7 Traffic, Part 1, On-Street Traffic Regulations, Section 7-30, Stop Intersections, and Section 7-31, Yield Intersections of the Code of the Borough of Bloomingdale.
Thank you. We had two non-agenda items. That would be 29. One is to introduce by title ordinance 29, 2019, second final, 10/22. This is Rec Department's new ski program. They used to have one years ago. They're resurrecting that. It'll be at Camp Gall. 4-week program. You could bump it up to 2 weeks, busing included, chaperones provided, et cetera, et cetera. So who makes that motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
An ordinance of the Borough of Bloomingdale, County of Passaic, State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 2, Administration, Section 2-6411, Fees for Recreation Programs of the Code of the Borough of Bloomingdale.
Thank you. Second non-agenda item was a resolution 2019 10.13 to allow a road opening permit for 28 Crane Ave, based on our provisions requiring a $2,000 road opening permit bond. So the homeowner is replacing their sidewalks and driveway apron. And they literally have to do, a 2-inch cut on Crane, but Crane was paved within the last 5 years. So they require a road opening permit. And as we may say, well, it's such a small little area, which is true, we need the bond. I can't waive it, because if there was something gone wrong, or the contractor did too much cutting, whichever, I need it. And when the homeowner was told that, they were like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do that. It's a $50 bond. You go to your insurance agent, it's $50 to get a $2,000 road opening bond. So we're doing this because we don't meet again until the 22nd. And if they get the bond tomorrow and want to proceed, I don't want to hold them up. So it may go away and not be done. It's their driveway. I hope they do it. So, because it needs, the sidewalk and driveway needs to be done. So, I'm sorry, do I have a motion for that resolution?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? All in favor on that?
We can do a roll call.
Oh, a roll call on that, please.
Yazdi,
Yes.
Costa.
Yes.
D'Amato.
Yes.
Del Ripa.
Yes.
Hudson.
Yes.
Sondemire.
Yes.
All right,
Hey, John.
yes.
When somebody does the sidewalks like that, are they directed on how they should be done? So if we ever come through and redo the sidewalk, they don't have to do it again?
No,
To
because
meet
it's
this-
private, because there's no, there's no DOT requirement, because it's private property. We can't put more stipulations
There's
on
no
them.
permits that they have to take out?
Just a road opener.
Because it would be nice if they knew their contractor knew.
But you can't do the only reason we have all those specs and
I didn't
rules is
say
because we're
spec,
using
but just-
DOT money.
Suggested them that they get it done to meet it, so in 5 years from now, they don't have to spend another.
I understand, but the average homeowner is gonna spend his, $6-7 grand with Joe the Mason, and for our engineer to get involved, more money.
No,
And I'm just saying, to give the specs, the height, the elevations for handicap and all that, makes that project for that homeowner more than double, probably. I hear you loud and clear, because, right, in 6-7 years, if we go back and say, hey, we're doing a sidewalk assessment on Crane Ave, we run into those minor, new, and
I
don't
think
need to
there'd
be
be
done.
something you can print and say, here, look at this, and this is, maybe you give this to your contract.
I don't think,
Not that-
I mean, I'll talk to
It's all the
Tom.
same.
I don't know if there's something with specs as such simple, but it's a good question, and I will ask the engineer. I did send, or had Bree for me send a salt mailing to Red Twig homeowners about the salt. They shouldn't salt for the first year. So, all right. John, I will follow up, I'll let you know. Need a motion to open late public comment?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Anyone? Good answer. Motion to close?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
There's no exec session, governing body, 10:22. Remember, 8 a.m., November 1st, transfer day, maybe a couple things on the agenda. Need me plus 3, right, need plus 3. So who's good for that day? Who's committing to me now? Rich, Ray, John, okay? So the 3 on this side, do your best, but at least I have 3 here.
I definitely won't be here.
Okay, but that's an annual thing, so. Okay, don't forget, we make a note to send Ray.
Yeah.
I mean, them,
I
not
really
Ray.
think depending on what you put on there, I think for transfers, you need 4.
Okay, to be safe, I need me plus 4, so I do need 1 from this side. 8 a.m., 5-minute meeting, you've done it before. What's up?
I should have.
Okay?
Send me a reminder.
All right,
Send him many reminders.
we meet again before that. Need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Thanks, everybody. So Bill Graff.